right. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the world's most exciting classroom. My name is Joe Grabowski, and I'll be your host for today. I'm really looking forward to today's world's most exciting classroom because I have just gotten back from visiting the Oosterschelde. I was lucky enough to catch the ship in Ancon, which is just outside of Lima in Peru, and then spend about a week sailing along the coast of Peru until we arrived in Salinas in Ecuador. So I want to show you that on the map. Let's take a little look at where the Oosterschelde has been since we have last connected. And then I want to share some highlights with you of the journey that I had on board of the ship with the DARWIN200. So you can see here, let me zoom in a little bit. This is, there we go, just off the coast of Lima here. It's a little town called, well, first here we were in Callao, which is just outside of Lima. But then we brought the ship up here to Ancon for the week. And this is where we actually departed from. So we sailed along the coast of Peru. We eventually crossed kind of this big bay area. And this brought us across the border and into Salinas. And then you can see this little built up area here. This is about 2.5 hours away. This is Guayaquil, and this is where the main airport was. This is where we had to get to fly back home. So we are not going to have a live connection with the ship today because nobody's really on board right now. We are getting ready for a really important part of the DARWIN200, and that is our journey to the Galapagos. So I've still got the map open here. If I back up a little bit, about 1,000 kilometers off the coast of Ecuador, you find the island archipelago of the Galapagos. That will be our next destination. That is where we are going to spend about 3 weeks. And we have some really exciting events planned to do live from the Galapagos. So why is nobody on the ship right now? Well, the ship has to be prepared to sail across this stretch of open ocean to the Galapagos. So we need to do a little bit of maintenance. We need to refuel. And then most important of all, the hull of the ship needs to be cleaned. It needs to be cleaned to make sure there's no barnacles or any other hitchhikers, any invasive species that we might take with us to the Galapagos. It's an amazing area. It's a special area. It's battled with invasive species ever since men have first started visiting. So it's really important that we do our part to make sure we're not going to bring any invasive species with us when we visit the Galapagos. I'm going to come back from that screen share. And the first thing I'm going to do is I want to share some highlights with you. From my week sailing on the Oosterschelde, I met some amazing people from around the world, and I had such a great time sailing. So I have a few little video clips queued up here that I want to share with you so that you can experience a little bit of what it was like to be on the ship. So the first clip that I want to share with you is a little time lapse from the ship. So this is kind of, you can see a little bit of activity during the day. You can also see the sun setting. So here's a little time-lapse video from. So most days we started our day by putting up the sails, depending on how good the wind was. We'd put a few sails up or we'd put most of them up. But then usually after dinner, we'd have to take them all down because the wind would kind of die down. And then we'd have to use the engine at night to make sure that we got to where we wanted on time. But for the most part, during the day, we could put the sails up. It's a lot of work working the sails of a tall ship, lots of pulling, lots of adjustments during the day. But it's pretty rewarding to see all of those white sails unfurl and then to feel the ship moving under that sail power over the course of the day. So another video I want to show you, one of my favorite things to do, any excuse to climb up the masts, to climb the rigging and get up into the masts and work the sails and just spend time up there and see that 360 view of ocean surrounding you, no land in sight. Was one of my favorite things to do. So I have this little video clip from the top of the masts. So as you can imagine, it's quite an incredible view from up there. Horizon to horizon, nothing but ocean. And this little ship, this was our tiny home for 7 days. So you really got to know the other people who were on the ship. The crew is amazing and a lot of fun to spend time with. And you can see this day we just had the 3 front sails up. So depending on the direction of the wind, that kind of decides how many sails we can put up, how many we have to take down. If you put up too many, then you're just taking wind away from others. So it really depends on which angle that the wind is hitting the ship from. Now, when you're out on the ocean, it feels like a desert sometimes. Sometimes all you see is ocean for hours and hours and hours. Sometimes seabirds will fly by. We saw lots of Nazca boobies. We saw some blue-footed boobies, some Peruvian boobies, Inca terns, some albatross, like the waved albatross. But every once in a while, the ocean would explode with life. Maybe there'd be a big group of fish underwater and the seabirds would be diving down. That would attract big pods of dolphins. And so the last clip I want to share with you is a little bit of those dolphins. So I believe these are common Pacific dolphins. And so going from seeing nothing to seeing this, and I have to thank Rodri and Josh, who are the camera guys on board. They do amazing work with the drones, and they were able to capture some of this incredible dolphin footage. So you can see we're pulling away from the ship here. You can see we have way more sail set. So again, just the wind, the angle it was coming from, let us set many, many more sails this day. So we are moving much faster. And then you can see this large group, hundreds of dolphins, probably common Pacific dolphins based on their sides. And then they have this kind of white patch on their side as well. And if you look really carefully, you can see some of the mothers have baby dolphins swimming next to them. So the dolphins are a little bit smaller. Again, Rodri and Josh do incredible drone work. You can see that they're getting nice and low here over this pod as they jump through the water. In fact, you'll see one splash here. I think some droplets hit the camera. So from a barren ocean to just an explosion of life out on the ocean, this pod of common Pacific dolphins. And then we're going to get one more view from above. If you look very carefully, watch for the smaller dolphins swimming next to their mothers. You can see a couple baby dolphins once we go above here again. So they're kind of right in the middle. You can see one there, another one in behind. And this shot here really gives you a good perspective of just how many dolphins were around the ship at this time. So a big shout out to our camera team, Josh and Rodri, for doing such an amazing job in capturing this footage for us. All right. So that is what I want to share with you from the journey. Of course, there were more pictures, there were more experiences. If you do have any questions about what it was like, please feel free to use the side chat and I will answer some of those questions. You can put questions in there at any time. I'll keep an eye out for it. But yeah, it was an amazing time on the ship. I can't wait to catch up to it again in the Galapagos. The second week in the Galapagos that we are there, we plan on doing a lot of live events from the Galapagos. But we'll send that out in newsletters and on social media so everybody knows what's happening. So I have another question here about how deep was the ocean at this point of the journey. So we did check the depth a few times using some apps that we had, and the ship also had a depth finder as well. And so I think at that stage that it was about 600 meters deep where we were in the ocean. So about 600 meters deep, we were still on the continental shelf. So what that means is the continents are kind of surrounded by a shallow area that extends around them for, depending on the continent, it could be a couple hundred miles. And so it's a little bit shallower before it drops off into the really deep ocean that can be like 4, 5, 6 kilometers deep. So at that point of the journey to our classroom in Portugal, we were probably about 600 meters of depth below the ship. Okay, well, let's jump into what we're going to do for the rest of today. We're going to do a few things. We have the answer for last week's Curiosity of the Week. Our captain Jan Willem was good enough to come up with our curiosity of the week, so he has our answer for us. I have a recording. We do not have an experiment answer because 2 weeks ago I was in the Peruvian Amazon and we had a recorded version of the world's most exciting classroom. So we didn't do a new experiment. We've got a brand new one this week. And then I'll remind you that we do have an experiment we did from the ship looking at pepper in water and looking at the surface tension of water. So you still have 1 week to get your results in for a chance at a gift card. Today, what I want to do is get us ready for the Galapagos. I have been lucky enough to visit the Galapagos twice. It is one of the most amazing places on the planet. Sometimes people call it the Enchanted Isles, and for really good reason. I hope after I show you some pictures and video clips today that you understand why the Galapagos is such an amazing place, why it's so unique, and then why it features so much in Charles Darwin's story. So he visited the Galapagos, he collected specimens from the Galapagos, he visited multiple islands, and looking at animals like the mockingbirds, like the tortoises, like the finches, looking at the little differences between each island, it helped him start to put the pieces together for his theory of natural selection to explain what is going on with evolution. So that's what we're going to do next. I am going to share my screen and we are going to take a little trip to the Galapagos. Any questions, please put them into the chat. I'll try and keep an eye out for them. I'll answer more at the end. Then we'll have our Kahoot quiz and we'll continue on from there. So here we go. Let me share my screen one more time here. And let's get into it. There's what I want, but I want to make sure I'm at the very beginning. So give me 1 second to put my slides back to the beginning. Then I will share my screen. Perfect. Okay, here we go. All right. So let's acquaint ourselves with a little bit of geography here as we get started. So this is Brazil. And then if you look here where my mouse is, this is Ecuador. So the Galapagos is part of Ecuador. It's about 1,000 kilometers offshore. So the main way to get to the Galapagos Islands, unless you sail, is to fly into Ecuador, usually somewhere like Quito or Guayaquil, and then to take a little flight, maybe an hour and a half to get to the Galapagos. So let's take a little closer look at these islands. So this is the archipelago of the Galapagos, and they are volcanic islands. So they were formed by volcanic activity on the ocean floor, and that volcanic activity is still going today. So there is a hot spot on the ocean floor right here underneath Fernandina. So Fernandina is the youngest island in the Galapagos. So it's the most newly formed. It's still volcanically active. In fact, a few weeks ago, Fernandina erupted. And the eruptions only usually last 2 or 3 days. Then it's quiet for a while. And then there could be more eruptions in the future. So Fernandina is the youngest island. It is the most west over this hotspot. And then there's kind of a conveyor belt. Over time, these islands form and they move to the east along this conveyor belt. They move away from the hotspot. So Isabella is the biggest island. And it is actually a collection of 6 volcanoes that formed from the ocean floor and grew together to make one island. So this island's still volcanically active. When you get to these ones in the middle, like Santiago and Santa Cruz, they are no longer volcanically active. They've had lots of time for life to take a hold. So they're green and lush, lots of plants, lots of animal species living here. And then when you get to the east of the Galapagos, you get Espanola hiding down here. That's the oldest island in the Galapagos. And then there's San Cristobal. And so these islands still have lots of life, but they're eroding. They're getting much flatter and they're slowly sinking into the ocean. So if you could follow that trail from the islands leading back to South America, you would find islands of the Galapagos that have sunk back below the ocean. So they would have formed in the hotspot. They would have moved through this area. And then over time, they would have sunk back into the ocean. So that is the fate of the islands in the Galapagos. They're formed, they have life, they erode away, and then they slowly sink back into the ocean. And Espanola and San Cristobal in the future will be the next 2 islands to do that. Now, coming down there, I had to fly from Canada and I flew over the Panama Canal. And I really like this picture because if you don't know what the Panama Canal is, it's a passage cut between the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. So it's incredible engineering, and it allows us to save a whole bunch of time. So if you look at this map, if you wanted to sail from Europe to California or Africa to maybe Ecuador, you would normally have to go all the way through the Atlantic Ocean, all the way through and around South America, and all the way back up. But the Panama Canal is a shortcut. You can cut right through here between the Atlantic and the Pacific and save a whole bunch of time, a whole bunch of money, and a whole bunch of fuel. So you can see all of these ships here are lined up full of containers and products and probably food and produce and fuel, and they're all waiting their turn to go through the Panama Canal because it saves so much time. Now, this is my first glimpse years ago, the first time I went to the Galapagos. So you can see this is an island here. It looks very much like a volcano. You can see that it formed volcanically. It's not a volcano anymore. It's dormant. This island here is called Daphne. This is one of the smaller islands in the Galapagos. In fact, nobody can really visit this one unless you're a researcher and you're doing research on the island. You have to get special permission. That's what's exciting about the Galapagos is 95% of those islands are completely protected. Nobody can live there. Nobody can visit there. Nobody can take things from there. So it's national park, completely protected, and left for the wildlife to thrive and do their thing. There's only 4 places you can live in the Galapagos. The biggest one is Puerto Ayero. The smallest one is in Floriana, and that is only about 200 people who can live there. So that was my first glimpse of the Galapagos. And both times I was there, I sailed on ships. So the best way to see all these different islands is to spend your time on a ship and sailing from island to island. So the first time I went was on this ship. This is the National Geographic Endeavour. And the second time I went was on this smaller ship. This is the National Geographic Islander. So these ships were my home base for the time that I spent in the Galapagos on the 2 trips that I've had there. Then you get to spend the whole day visiting the islands, and you do that by jumping in these little zodiacs. So these little zodiacs are rubber inflatable boats. You can jump into them and you can go to the island to hike. You can go snorkeling. Sometimes we just cruise along the edge of the island and take photos of the wildlife we see on the cliffs and on the shoreline of the different islands. Every island in the Galapagos is like visiting a new world. Every island is like visiting a different country. They're all different. They're all unique. The animals you find on them are all unique, which is pretty cool. So when you find animals somewhere, nowhere else in the world, we say they're endemic. If they're found in one place in the world, they're an endemic species. They're only found in one spot. Sometimes that could be a whole country. Sometimes that could be a whole rainforest. Sometimes it could be just a tiny patch of trees or a piece of coral reef. And that's the only place in the world you can find that species. So let's look at some of these islands. This one might look familiar to you. This is Daphne. We just saw Daphne from above when I flew in. And this is what Daphne looks like from the water when you're sailing past it. This one here is Santa Cruz. So that black rock is volcanic rock that would have come out of the earth as molten liquid rock and eventually made its way to the edge of the island and cooled. And so you can really tell that volcanic rock is that deep, deep black color. This is San Cristobal. This is another very different looking island, a different looking beach. You don't see as much of the volcanic rock, but you do see these beautiful cliffs, these beautiful mountaintops, I guess, these small little climbs. This is the other side of San Cristobal. So you've got these white sandy beaches on this side. You can see it's flat. It's starting to erode. And then you can see, again, some of that black lava rock and that really beautiful blue water. This is the oldest island in the Galapagos. This is Espanola. And so this is a little blowhole. So a little hole in the rock. When the water hits the cliffs, it's forced out really strongly through that rock, creating a really cool blowhole effect, like a whale. This is what the kind of scrub life or plant life looks like on some of the islands. This is prickly pear cactus. This is a forest of prickly pear cactus, and you can see that we have some finches sitting on top of those. This is a rock face wall on San Cristobal. Very dry at this time of the year. You can see that most of the plant life has kind of, looks like it's died away, but it's kind of tricking you because when it gets rain, which can be rare, it will explode into life. There's seeds waiting below the surface to burst into life and take advantage of any rain, any moisture that falls on the islands. The beaches are incredible. These stretches of beaches with nobody in sight. So this is Santiago, and at night, this beach would be very busy. You'd have the green sea turtles pulling themselves on shore to come up and lay their eggs. So they dig their nests, they lay their eggs. They lay about 100 eggs, and they're about the size of a ping pong ball. And then they head back to the ocean, and they'll do that 6 or 7 nights in a row. So one sea turtle, one female sea turtle could lay 700 eggs in a season, and they have to do a lot because about 1 in every 10,000 sea turtles babies make it to an adult. So it takes a lot of eggs to get an adult, because when you're a baby sea turtle, you are a good snack for birds and sharks and fish and anything else in the ocean that thinks you look tasty. This is Floriana, another island in the Galapagos. There's a settlement of about 200 people, I believe, that live in Floriana. Here's another view from Floriana, looking at the ship that I was staying on. That's the Islander. And then this is San Cristobal. You can see a whale cruising by. This is a humpback whale cruising by the island. I've got a couple pictures of this whale that I'm going to show you a little bit later on. And then this is one of the little towns. This is Porto Aero. This is the biggest city in the Galapagos. And it's the only place in the world I've ever had to step over a sea lion to go to the bank. So the animals in the Galapagos are not afraid of humans. For millions of years, they evolved with no humans around. Humans didn't show up in the Galapagos for the first time until the 1500s. And during all that time beforehand, there weren't many predators on the islands. So the wildlife there, the birds, the reptiles, the seals, they don't see humans as predators. So they pretty much ignore you. And you can watch them go about their daily activities as if you weren't even there. Whereas here, if I went out for a walk, the deer, the birds, the rabbits would run away very quickly if I came around. This is one of my favorite islands. This island's called Rabida. So this island here is red because the volcanic rock was full of iron, and that iron rusted in the wet weather, in the air. Over time, the rock rusted and the whole island turned red. And so this is a good example of a conservation story. There's a lot of work in the Galapagos to get rid of invasive species, because when people first started arriving, they brought insects and mice and rats, dogs and cats, sheep, goats, cows, and things like that. And those invasive species have caused a lot of trouble in the islands. They've hurt the native wildlife. So in particular on Rabida, there is the Galapagos hawk. So these hawks are only found in the Galapagos. They're endemic to the Galapagos. And they're in trouble because cats, rats, mice, they would eat the chicks, they would eat the eggs, and so their numbers were falling. So they had to get rid of the rats and the mice from this island. So their plan was to put poison bait for the rats and the mice. The problem is, though, if these Galapagos hawk ate those rats and mice, they would die from the poison. So they had to go to the island, they had to catch all of the Galapagos hawks and take them off the island. And they kept them in a little hawk hotel for a few weeks. Then they could put the poison bait all over the island, and that killed all of the rats, all of the mice. Then it was safe to return the hawks back to the island. So it was a long process. They had to catch all the birds, they had to move them. But the island is now free of rats and mice. So it's a real good conservation success story, and it shows you how complicated it can be sometimes. Now, I love these birds. These are the blue-footed boobies. You can find them in a couple places around the world, but mostly in the Galapagos. And obviously, they get their name from these beautiful, beautiful blue feet. Now, one of my favorite things to do is to watch the male blue-footed boobies dance. They dance to try and attract a mate. They dance to impress the females. So if we look in this next picture here, this male is dancing and he's showing off his feet. And if you look at the female, she is watching and she is really looking at his feet. Why is she looking at his feet? Well, the bluer the feet, the more healthy the bird is. So when they hunt in the ocean and they catch fish. The more fish they catch, the more pigment, the more color from those fish is transferred to their feet. So that's why he is dancing and showing off his feet. And that is why she is watching. She is trying to decide, is he healthy? Is he strong? Would he be able to bring lots of fish for the chicks if I chose him as a mate? So there's lots of parts to this dance. He has to do other parts called sky pointing, where he points at the sky and he calls really loudly. So I watched this guy dance for this female for 10 minutes at least. And then in the end, she flew away. And he looked kind of shocked that his dance wasn't good enough, that his feet weren't blue enough. However, in a different situation, if the female is interested, if she does think that he's a good choice, she'll join in the dance as well. And so you can see these two are starting to dance together. You can see again, the male is still showing off his feet. And you can see she is really looking to try and decide, is she making a good choice? Then the male will hold up sticks like this to show off and say, hey, this stick would be great for our nest. And then she joins in the sky pointing. So she's pretty happy with her choice. And then if successful, weeks later, you will probably have two chicks like this blue-footed booby does here. And then the male and the female take turns going to catch fish. And then they regurgitate that fish. They barf it back up for the baby birds when they come back to their nests. Other birds in the Galapagos, these pelicans, if you look at this one here, it has just caught a fish. So the last thing that this fish is seeing is the sky before it disappears into this pelican's belly. The Galapagos has penguins. So the penguins in the Galapagos, they are the furthest north that you will ever find penguins. So they are on the equator. They live on the equator. You won't find penguins any further north than the Galapagos, and you won't find a lot of them. I think there's somewhere around 200 Galapagos penguins left. So they're endemic to the Galapagos. They're only found there, and they are endangered, the Galapagos penguins. But it is really neat to see them on the rocks. If you guys remember from past events, there's 14 species of penguins. Only 4 species are in Antarctica. The other 10 are found in different places around the world, including our Galapagos penguins. These birds are incredible. These are flightless cormorants. So you probably have cormorants where you live. They're very common. They live around lakes. They live around the ocean. They dive in the ocean to catch fish. Now, when these guys showed up in the Galapagos, they would have been able to fly. This would have been hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of years ago. They would have still been able to fly. But with no predators on land and getting all their food from the ocean, over hundreds of thousands of years, their wings slowly became vestigial. And that's just a special way of saying they aren't used anymore. So they got smaller and smaller in favor of their legs getting bigger, their bodies getting stronger to swim in the water. So they can't fly anymore. They're completely flightless. They catch everything they need from the ocean. So this male had just come back from hunting. You can see he's all wet, but he's got a special gift here of seaweed. Apparently, female cormorants love seaweed. So he's gone out, he's caught some fish. He also is bringing back a gift of some seaweed for his mate. So you can see he's back at the nest. He's warming up in the sun. Look at those tiny little wings. The seaweed is there. The present is there. And the female is getting ready to take her turn. She's going to go find some fish. And then the male is going to feed these 2 chicks. So that's one chick there. And the other one's just tucked in behind. So these flightless cormorants are beautiful birds. They have these beautiful blue eyes. Yeah, really incredible. This was my favorite island to visit. This is Bartolome. This is the most photographed spot in the Galapagos. So if you look here, there's this rock sticking up here. This is called Pinnacle Rock. These volcanoes in the background, this is Santiago. And then this here is an old little volcanic hotspot. And this here is a little plug. So eventually the rock hardened and sealed this little plug here. So this is an old volcanic hotspot, and this little plug plugged it off probably thousands and thousands of years ago. And look at this view. You climb up the volcano here on Bartolome, and you get this incredible view over these two bays. This is Santiago in the background. You can see the lava field here. You can see that these would have been two tiny little islands, but they were surrounded by lava, and so they're landlocked now. And then we went snorkeling all through here and along here, and saw green sea turtles, Galapagos penguins, white-tip reef sharks, sea lions. Just a beautiful spot to visit. This is a land iguana. So land iguanas live on land. They're bright yellow like this, the males, and they protect something called a prickly pear cactus. They have a territory, and that's the food they eat, those prickly pear cactuses I showed you earlier. And then they protect that. They keep other males away. And they try to attract females to their territory. On Floriana, there is a post office. This is the post office. This post office has been running since probably the 1700s. So the only visitors back then to the Galapagos were whalers. Whalers would go out hunting whales, but they would spend sometimes 3, 4, 5 years on the ocean hunting whales to fill their ship with oil to bring back and sell. How would they get mail home? Well, they would stop on Floriana. They'd put their mail in a barrel. And then if a ship was returning home, maybe it was going back to the US, maybe it was going back to the UK, it would take that bag of mail and they would deliver that mail back home. So still to this day, you can visit this island. You can make a postcard and put it in that barrel, and then tourists from around the world will look through the postcards and see if one of them is close to where they live, and they'll hand deliver that postcard to you. In fact, when I visited last, it was 2021, and 3 days ago, the postcard I put in that barrel back in 2021 arrived at my house. So it takes some time. It's not fast mail, but eventually it's pretty cool. It'll arrive back at your house. And it's been like that since like the 1700s. Whalers have been leaving mail and dropping mail off for other whalers. The sea lions are lots of fun in the Galapagos. Every island has the sea lions around the shore. Sometimes they argue. Sometimes they have really nice quiet moments, like this pup drinking milk from its mother. There's another shot there of another pup. Curious, the little sea lions. Always around you when you're in the zodiacs, when you're in the water. They're very playful. They're very smart. They're very curious. And then there's flamingos in the Galapagos. Believe it or not, there's a small group of flamingos. So in some of the marshy areas, you can sometimes come across some of these flamingos. This is a Sally Lightfoot crab on the lava rock. A striated heron here hunting along the shore for fish. There are 3 species of booby. So we talked about the blue-footed booby. There's the red-footed booby. They're more rare. And then there's the Nazca booby. So there's 3 species of booby altogether in the Galapagos. Then there's these beautiful waved albatross. So waved albatross are some of the biggest birds in the world. They get their name from the pattern on their chest. And if you look closely at their chest, it's kind of a wavy pattern in their feathers. So they get the name waved albatross because of that pattern. They can spend a year flying on the ocean, never setting foot on land, catching fish and squid, but they do return to the same spot on Espanola for mating, to raise a chick. And when they mate for life. So they come back to the island, they find their mate after not having seen them for probably a whole year, and then they really are excited. They greet each other, they touch and clank their beaks together, They have a little dance. They are very, very excited to see each other. And then they get right down to business, and we have a chick. They usually raise one chick. You can see this chick here. And here's another nice close-up of one of those chicks. So again, they take turns going out, catching fish, catching squid, and regurgitating it for their young. The marine iguanas. So before I talk about marine iguanas, we have to talk about how life gets to the islands. When the islands formed, they would have been rock. Barren, empty, lava rock. So how does life get to the Galapagos? Well, seeds can drift from land. They can go high up in the air into the atmosphere and eventually settle on the islands. So that's how we get some of our plants growing. Birds can fly to the islands, of course. There are some bats, so they would have flown to the islands as well. But how did snakes, how did tortoises, how did iguanas get to the Galapagos? They would have floated. So big storms in Peru, big storms in Ecuador would have washed big parts of plants and trunks of trees and palm fronds into the water, forming little floating islands. It would have washed tortoises and iguanas onto those as well. And they can live on the ocean for a long time without food and water. And so they would have drifted to the islands. So one species of iguana would have drifted there. One species of tortoise, we call those pioneer species. But because they drifted to different islands, over time, they formed new species. They changed slowly over time to be different depending on the island. So the marine iguanas on each island are slightly different. The tortoises on each island are a little bit different. The mockingbirds, the finches, are slightly different species. Now, the marine iguana are the only lizards in the world that hunt by swimming in the ocean and eating green stuff from the ocean. So they dive down onto the rocks and they eat algae, they eat little bits of seaweed, but they can't last long. They're cold-blooded. They get very, very cold in the ocean. So they crawl back up on land and they spend most of the day warming up in the sun. Now the catch, though, is their bodies are full of salt from the salt water and they have to get it out. They have special glands in their nose, and that's how they get the salt out. If you look really closely, this one is sneezing salty snot rockets all over its buddies. So if you're on the beach in the Galapagos, you'll hear sneezing, and that's the marine iguanas getting the extra salt out of their body. So if you look at the next picture, you can see the salt exploding all over the other iguanas. So we can look at that a few times. We can see that salty snot shooting out all over. And that's what they do. That's how they get the salt out of their bodies. The marine iguanas. Here they are on another island. You can see they have more red, a little bit of red mixed into their black coloration. And then this one here, not only does it have a little bit of red, it's got some kind of turquoise mixed into it with its coloration. Here are some invasive species. This is San Cristobal, and these are goats. These goats do not belong here. They are eating the plants. They are trampling the nests of birds. So they are an invasive species, and they are slowly being removed from the islands because you can protect the ecosystem much better without the goats here. In fact, here's a little frigate bird sitting on its nest, and you can see how close the goats are and how easily these goats could trample on the nest of that bird. The ocean is beautiful to explore in the Galapagos, and that's how we're going to wrap up today, is talking about the ocean. This is Kicker Rock. So this is a rock formation here. It looks kind of like a soccer boot. It's a beautiful place to scuba dive. Sea turtles, hammerheads, manta rays, big schools of fish. And the humpback whales pass through here as well. We saw that humpback whale earlier. And this one here is breaching. It is leaping out of the water, and it's going to splash down really hard. Scientists don't really know why humpbacks do this. Some think maybe they do it for fun. Some think it's communication. That big splash would be heard through the ocean for a long way. Others think that maybe there's parasites on the humpback whales, so they jump out of the water, and when they hit the water really hard, it knocks some of those parasites off. So those are all good hypotheses. Why do humpback whales like to breach Why do they like to jump out of the water like that? And we cannot leave this talk without talking about the giant tortoises. The giant tortoises in the Galapagos, there's a different species on each island. They're all unique. You can see how big they are. This is a duck down here in the corner, and this duck is only about as big as the back foot of this tortoise, but they can get much, much larger. Unfortunately, some species are very endangered on the island they're found, and on some islands they're extinct. So when whalers visited the islands, they used to collect the tortoises, and then they used to take them for food. So they would turn them upside down in the storage area of their ship, in the holds, and they could live upside down for months. And then that would be a fresh source of food for the sailors. Unfortunately, that's led to many species being endangered today, and some of them gone completely. There's another beautiful picture of a tortoise. You can see they like to kind of sit in the water and wallow in the water during the day. Depending on the island, sometimes they're really low to the ground because they eat food from the ground. Sometimes they have really long necks like a giraffe because they're reaching higher into the trees for their food. And this is the last photo here, two icons of the Galapagos. We have a giant tortoise with a finch, one of Darwin's finches, sitting on top of its shell. And the very last thing I want to show you today is a video of what it's like swimming in the waters around the Galapagos. So let me share this video file with you. As the video is playing, if you have any questions, get those into the chat, and then we're going to play our Kahoot once this video finishes as well. So I'll narrate this video a little bit as you watch. There is a little bit of sound, but it's mostly bubbles. So here we are in the Zodiac. We're off a little tiny island here. Here we go, splashdown. These waters are so full of life because they're cold and full of nutrients. So there's currents that run along the ocean floor full of nutrients. When they hit the islands, they're forced upwards. When they hit the wall of the island, we call that upwelling. And that upwelling is full of nutrients. It's cold, cold water, and it allows for lots of life to live. Like this wall of fish here, this beautiful school of fish. The young sea lions, they love to play. They will sneak up and blow bubbles in your face. They love it when you dive down and do somersaults with them. And they're also really, really sneaky. They can get a hold of something that's loose, like maybe your swim fin. They won't hesitate to steal your swim fin. Like this one here got a hold of my swim fin. Definitely thought I had a pretty cool new toy, but I did have to take my swim fin back because it's a pretty important piece of gear when you're in the ocean. If you look here, these are 3 white-tip reef sharks. So they're nocturnal. During the day, they usually find a little ledge to hide under. Sometimes they swim around a little bit, but at night is when they really like to come out and hunt for some food. So you can see there's 3 here hiding out under this little rock ledge. Under this little rock, we have related species to the shark. We have a stingray sitting under this rock. And I think the last little clip here is just swimming with a green sea turtle. Yeah, there we go. Sometimes you could be in the water and look around and see 10, 20, even 30 green sea turtles swimming around you. And they get their name because they eat so much green stuff that their fat turns green. If we could look inside this turtle and we could look at its fat, you would see that it is a really cool green color. Okay, so that's what I wanted to share today. I wanted to start getting us excited for the Galapagos because once the hull of the Oosterschelde is clean, it will start its sail to the Galapagos. So next week, we'll likely connect from the ship as it's sailing to the island. So that should be fun. And then the next 3 weeks, we will be doing live events from the Galapagos, including the second week in the Galapagos will be devoted to one live event a day from somewhere really cool in the Galapagos. So I can't wait to have all the classrooms following along with us. If there's any questions, put them in the chat sidebar. I'm going to get the Kahoot quiz ready, and we'll play some Kahoot together before we wrap up with our experiment and our curiosity of the week. I do see a question here in the chat from our crew in Portugal, and they are wondering about the most unusual animal I saw in the Galapagos. There's lots of strange animals in the Galapagos. The flightless cormorants were probably one of my favorites. I've wanted to see them for a long time. In fact, I have an extra bonus video here. Let me play this bonus video. So I was lucky enough to be snorkeling, and a flightless cormorant popped up next to me. And you can see those big, powerful back legs for swimming in the water. And you can see, oh, green sea turtle popping in. And you can see how they dive down. And he's looking all along the rocks here, looking for fish. Trying to find a little fish to catch, a little fish to eat. And if you watch carefully, it's going to come back up the other side. And it's got a little orange fish there. So it's successfully caught and swallowed up that fish. And then I like this view here of the cormorant swimming by, not a care in the world, and back under looking for some more fish to eat. So they're pretty cool. They're pretty unusual. The marine iguanas, they kind of look almost like little Godzillas, and seeing them swimming in the ocean is pretty unique as well. So marine iguanas, flightless cormorants, those are pretty unique, unusual species you can find in the Galapagos. So I'm going to share my screen now. And we are going to get to our Kahoot quiz. I have 5 questions ready for us to go today. And I'm going to host that Kahoot right now. There we go. Maybe I'll put it on my second screen. That'll be easier. Okay. Sharing screen now. You want to go to kahoot.it. It's going to ask you for your PIN number. 455087 is our PIN number for today. 455087, kahoot.it. If there's any more questions kicking around there, put them into the chat sidebar. And we will wait just a couple minutes to see if we get some students or some classrooms coming in with us. And then we will play our Kahoot together. So in a few weeks, we will be in the Galapagos. I think we had a nice little intro to the Galapagos today. I hope those pictures, I hope those video clips get you excited, thinking about the islands, and maybe wanting to dive in a little bit more, do a little bit more research, explore the islands for yourself. And then we are going to take you there live. And with any luck, we will show you some albatross. We will show you some giant tortoises. We will show you some marine iguanas, some sea lions, maybe even something from the ocean. Who knows what we're going to get up to. It's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait. Okay, this might be our group for today. So 5 questions. We have multiple choice. We have true and false. The right answer will get you points. The quicker you put in the right answer, the more points you're going to get. If you put in the wrong answer, it doesn't matter how fast you do it, we have no points for you. So take a moment. Sometimes the questions can be tricky. Make sure you're putting that right answer in. Here we go with our Kahoot. The youngest island in the Galapagos is called, did I say it was San Cristobal, Espanola, Santa Cruz, or Fernandina? So the youngest island in the Galapagos, was it San Cristobal? Was it Espanola? Was it Santa Cruz? Or was it Fernandina? Whew, good job, crew. It was Fernandina. That's absolutely correct. It is over that hot spot, and it is still very volcanically active. The dynamic sloth is in first place, and we go to our next question. Another one here. What does endemic mean? Does endemic mean found all over the world? Does it mean found in the ocean? Does it mean found in one place in the world? Or does it mean found in the desert? So is it all over the world? Is it in the ocean? Is it only one place? Or the desert? Can't fool you guys. Everybody went with found in one place in the world. That is an endemic species. And there are a ton of endemic species in the Galapagos. In fact, islands in general, due to their nature of being isolated and far away from other places, they are usually the home to a lot of unique species. True and false coming your way. No other species of penguin is found further north than those in the Galapagos. Is that true or is that false? That no other species of penguin is found further north than the Galapagos. All right, absolutely true. Penguins are in the southern hemisphere. The only exception is the penguins found in the Galapagos, right on the equator. Whew, lots of movement, moving every question. Snowy Horse is in first place. 4 or 5, waved albatross get their name because they fly low over ocean waves. True or false that the waved albatross get their name because they fly really low over ocean waves? Is that true or is that false? Absolutely false. Good job, crew. That feather pattern on their chest gives that kind of wavy look, and that's why they get that name, waved albatross. All right, Snowy Horse is holding on for a round. One more question. Marine iguanas remove excess salt from their bodies through going to the bathroom, sneezing from their nose, from their skin, or by drinking cold water. So how are those marine iguanas getting salt out of their body? The washroom, sneezing. All right. It is sneezing from their nose. We saw the marine iguanas doing those salty snot rockets. That is how they get that extra salt from their bodies. Let's look at our podium. In third place, we have the swift ostrich. In second place, the dynamic sloth. And in first place, holding down that top spot, we've got the smiling sable. Very, very good job, crew. If you are the classroom with the smiling sable, you want to send me a message to classroom@darwin200.com. Send us a message. Let us know it was you, and we will take care of you. So classroom@darwin200.com. Okay, let's come back from that Kahoot and let us wrap up the world's most exciting classroom for this week. We don't have a new experiment, or sorry, we don't have experiment results to show you because 2 weeks ago, as I mentioned, I was in the Amazon rainforest and we had a pre-recorded event. So we didn't do a live experiment. However, last week on the ship, we found some materials, some soap, some pepper, some water, and we looked at surface tension. So I want to see some photos of you trying that experiment in your classroom, and I want you to tell us at classroom@darwin200.com why that happened. So you have still a week to get those answers in, but we do have a brand spanking new experiment for you today. So let's take a look at that experiment. And then of course you will have 2 weeks to get results in for that. So hopping into my video here, this week's experiment. Oops, make sure I don't play the curiosity first. Here we go. This week's experiment.
In this week's experiment, we're going to explore the use of colour in the natural world. Animals, plants and fungi use colour in an astonishingly diverse rainbow of ways. Organisms come in every colour imaginable. From blue parrots, red insects, green flowers and plants with yellow leaves, organisms come in every colour imaginable. Although the use of colour is incredibly complex. Most organisms have pigments in their tissues, although some have reflective or even iridescent surfaces, and a few bioluminesce or emit light and actively glow. You might remember from your early days at school that there are 2 sets of primary colours, one that applies to pigments and another that applies to lights, and the different combinations of these primary colours makes different secondary colours. Just as a reminder, let's look at those now. So if we have red paint, some blue paint, and lastly some yellow paint, If we mix these primary colours of pigment together, we get different secondary colours. Yellow and red make orange. Yellow and blue make green. And red and blue make purple. As you can see with my painting here. But the primary colours of light work completely differently. If you have a red light, a green light, and a blue light, you end up with yellow, cyan, and magenta. And the combination of all three makes white light. Let's turn the lights off to see that more clearly. And what about the most mysterious use of colour in the whole natural world? That of bioluminescent organisms. How do they create and control their eerie glow? And what system of primary colours applies? That of pigments or that of light? Send in your thoughts to classroom@darwin200.com for a chance to win £50 Amazon gift voucher prizes. Join us in 2 weeks' time to find out the answers. Good luck and thank you for taking part.
All right, there we go. That is our experiment, colors. And in fact, that reminds me of another story from sailing on the ship. I saw, well, pretty much one of the most incredible things I've ever seen in my entire life on the ship. So when ships sail through the water, sometimes you see bioluminescence. So they're single-celled organisms, dinoflagellates in the water. And when they're disturbed, so waves, the ship pushing through, they emit kind of a turquoise, like a bluey green color. That's how they communicate with each other. That's kind of how they show alarm. So one night we were sailing, it was totally dark, and there was a bow wave coming off the front of the ship. And the bow wave was this eerie bluey green color. It was absolutely beautiful. But then some dolphins started swimming through it. So it was too dark to see the dolphins, but when they swam through the wave, their bodies glowed in the dark. So we were watching these bioluminescent glow-in-the-dark dolphins as they raced through the water along the bow wave, highlighted in this bluey green, glow-in-the-dark shaped dolphins. It was pretty much one of the most incredible things I've ever seen, to see these bioluminescent dolphins racing through the bow wave. Couldn't get enough of it. It was something to see. So 2 weeks to replicate that experiment, and then you want to send in pictures to classroom@darwin200.com, classroom@darwin200.com for your chance at a prize. So 2 weeks for that experiment, classroom@darwin200.com. Let's see. So to wrap up, we have our curiosity of the week. Last week, it was from the ship. Captain Jan Willem was good enough to show us a curiosity, and I have a little recording here of him giving us the answer to last week's curiosity. 1 week ago, we were out DARWIN200 on the Oosterschelde, and we had our curiosity of the week, courtesy of our captain, Jan Willem, joining us. So we need the answer to our curiosity. So Captain, can you tell us a little bit about our curiosity from last week?
Yeah, definitely. The instrument I am holding, it's called a sextant. Sextant is used to measure the angle between any heavenly body and the horizon. What you do is you point the sextant at the horizon and at a heavenly body, for instance the sun, and then I look through the lens, and by moving this lever here I can line up the sun on the horizon, and here I will see then the angle of the sun to the horizon.
All right, so a good tool for navigation.
Good tool for navigation, although only with the sextant we are not there yet. It comes with a book.
Huh.
Because only with the angle you're not there. It comes with a book with a lot of tables and some bunch of formulas, and then you can calculate your latitude and longitude.
All right, so calculate your longitude and latitude. So there's some maths involved with the sextant.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, excellent. Well, Captain, thank you so much for showing us our curiosity of the week. A sextant, a really important tool for navigation, and keep those maths going in school because they come up everywhere. Science, doesn't matter what you're doing, math is always there.
You will need it on board.
All right, thank you, Captain. All right, so last week's curiosity of the week from the Oosterschelde was their sextant. They only have one of those on the ship. They don't use it often because there's GPS for navigation. However, power could be lost, GPS systems can go down. So having that backup tool to navigate manually using stars, the moon, the sun is important. So the captain, it's important that they learn how to use something like a sextant so they can still navigate. So we are going to sign off for today. I'm going to play our curiosity of the week. So you have 1 week to get that answer in. Let me share that one more time. Classroom at DARWIN200.com. I'm going to play that curiosity of the week now. Then we're going to thank our sponsors and supporters before we say goodbye. So let's look at our next curiosity. Here it comes.
Welcome back, everyone. This curiosity of the week has 2 parts to the question. You have to identify what animals these claws belong to. I'll give you a bit of a clue. One lives in the water and one lives on land. Obviously they're similar, but if you look closely, there are some differences. Send in your answers to classroom@darwin200.com for a chance to win £50 Amazon gift voucher prizes. Join us in a week's time to find out the answer. Good luck and thank you for taking part.
Okay, there we go. Curiosity of the week. Clearly they came from an animal. Clearly one's in the water, one's on land. What do you think those claws came from? Classroom at DARWIN200.com. Get those answers in. You have 1 week for that. You have 1 week for last week's experiment, 2 weeks for this week's experiment. Get those photos in. Lots of prizes to be given out. You have a good chance if you try those out in your classroom or at home. So last thing we do, as per usual, is thank our sponsors, thank our supporters, without whom the Darwin 200, the world's most exciting classroom, wouldn't be possible. Thank you, everybody, for joining in today. I hope you learned something about the Galapagos. I hope you were excited for the weeks to come. About the next month plus, we will be heading to the Galapagos, in the Galapagos, exploring the Galapagos. It's going to be a special treat. We look forward to your classrooms joining us. We'll send lots of information in the newsletters. For now, I am going to say goodbye. I am going to sign off with a thank you to our sponsors, to our supporters.